The war begins in September 1980 when Iraq invades Iran. Saddam Hussein believes the moment is right. Iran is weakened by its Islamic revolution, and he expects victory in weeks. Instead, the war will drag on for 8 years, kill hundreds of thousands, shake the global oil market, and pull the U.S. permanently into the Persian Gulf. It will be the last total war of the 20th century. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution sends political shockwaves across the Middle East. Under the Shah, Iran was an American ally, but his oppressive rule leads to his downfall. Now, Islamic revolutionaries hostile to the U.S. hold power. This shift raises tensions with Iraq, ruled by 42-year-old dictator Saddam Hussein and the secular Ba'ath Party. Having consolidated power by eliminating rivals, Saddam dominates a nation of 13.5 million, mostly Arabic-speaking Shia Muslims, though a Sunni minority controls the regime. In the north, the Kurds face crackdowns alongside Shia insurgents who reject Sunni rule. Iran, larger and more populous with over 38 million mostly Persian-speaking Shia, is led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the spiritual head of the revolution that installed a radical Islamist government. Iran also has restive minorities, Azeris, Baluchis, Kurds, and Arabs in oil-rich Khuzestan. Saddam sees the revolution as a historic opening. It is more useful to strike the Iranians now because they are weak. If we wait, they will overrun us. Under the Shah, Iran was the region's dominant power, but the revolution has left it fractured. Many officers despise the new government, and internal divisions split moderates and hardliners. Kurdish uprisings and exiled Iranians in Iraq warn Saddam that Iran's military is crippled by purges. A failed coup in July 1980 further exposes instability. The oil economy is faltering, and Iraq fears revolutionary zeal may spread to its Shia majority. Bombings in Iraq are blamed on Iranian-backed extremists, while Tehran brands the Baathists as fascists, serving the Great Satan, America. When Saddam executes a Shia cleric and expels tens of thousands of Iranians, Khomeini declares, "The Ba'ath regime is monstrous, a little Satan serving the Great Satan, the U.S. We will unite Muslims, Arab, Persian, Turk, under Islam." Saddam, an Arab nationalist, dreams of leading the Arab world by defeating Iran and seizing Khuzestan's oil fields. Both nations back rebellions in each other's lands. Iran aids Iraqi Kurds. Iraq supports Khuzestani Arabs. By 1980, border skirmishes multiply around the Shatt al-Arab, or Arvand Rud, a crucial waterway to the sea. The 1975 treaty dividing it is scrapped in September 1980 as Saddam declares it Iraqi. He wagers on a swift campaign. Later rumors claim U.S. encouragement to punish revolutionary Iran, but evidence is lacking. Iraq plans a short war, knowing time favors Iran. Saddam calls it a second Qadisiyah, recalling the Arabs' ancient triumph over Persia. Iran will call it the imposed war. Baghdad trusts its Soviet-made weapons and expects Arab uprisings in Khuzestan. Intelligence chief Ali Hassan al-Majid warns of risks, but Saddam snaps, "Ali, why do you always bring bad news?" Iraq fields 250,000 troops, 1,700 tanks, 1,300 guns, and 295 aircraft. Iran musters 290,000 troops, 1,700 tanks, 1,100 guns, and 420 planes, with a stronger navy. Iraq's elite Republican Guard is capable, but most units are poorly trained. Iran's forces also lack training, with many officers replaced by loyal revolutionaries. The Revolutionary Guard rises in influence but clashes with regular officers. The war pits Soviet against Western arms. Iraq's T-72s and MiG-23s face Iran's F-14s, Chieftains, and M-60s, though Iran struggles to maintain them without U.S. support. Hoping to replicate Israel's 1967 air success, Saddam orders airstrikes on September 22nd, hitting Iranian airfields, but without precision munitions, damage is limited. On land, Iraq launches multi-front assaults with 2-to-1 and 4-to-1 local superiority, taking Qasr-e-Shirin and pushing toward Avaz. Their main targets are Abadan and Khorramshahr, vital oil and port cities. Surrounded by rivers and linked by 2 bridges, both towns resist fiercely. Iranian jets and Cobra helicopters batter Iraqi advances, even striking inside Iraq. including the Osirak nuclear site, though it survives. Iraqi errors and resistance halt the advance. After 5 weeks of brutal fighting, Khorramshahr falls in November. A Yugoslav ship captain trapped nearby recalls, "Every day and every night we wait for bombs to kill us. Iraq fails to seize Abadan. 200 vehicles sink into marshes, forcing a siege. Local Arabs do not welcome the invaders. Iraq's gamble stalls. Despite superior firepower, it achieves little, and Iranian Arabs stay loyal to Tehran. The UN calls for peace, but both sides refuse. Iran has endured the shock and prepares to counterattack. The foreign invasion rallies Iranians, even many regime opponents and minorities, under Khomeini's banner, uniting them against a common enemy. Iran forms a defense council to direct the war effort, but internal rivalries cripple it, as President Abolhassan Banisadr clashes with clerical leaders until his eventual removal. The nation mobilizes every available force: the regular army, police, Revolutionary Guards, and volunteer militias known as the Basij. Clerics recruit students in schools, and Tehran even releases imprisoned pilots who once backed the Shah, some later executed after helping repel the Iraqi assault. In January 1981, Iran takes the offensive with mixed results. Its troops drive the Iraqis back near Susanjard, only to be encircled and crushed by a counterattack. In the autumn, repeated offensives regain limited ground and break the siege of Abadan, but no decisive success follows. Then, in 1982, Iran launches its largest campaigns yet. Many of its new fighters are Basij volunteers, former soldiers, young boys, some just 12, driven by religion, loyalty to Khomeini, or simple patriotism. Others join under pressure. "I didn't want to go to war," recalls Mohsen Rashidi. "They forced me to. I just wanted to study abroad. They said, 'Serve 6 months on the battlefield. If you live, you can leave.'" Each Basiji wears a strip of white cloth, his own death shroud, and a small plastic key from Khomeini, a promise of entry into paradise. Poorly trained and armed, they suffer devastating losses. 13-year-old Zahed Haftlang remembers, "When I saw the first corpse, I froze. Boys my age losing arms, legs, faces torn apart. I just held their hands, crying, praying until they died." Despite the horror, their sacrifices prove crucial. Iran's tactics blend modern and traditional methods. Basij waves, clear minefields, and barbed wire for advancing Revolutionary Guards and regular troops, often at terrible cost, but with numerical success. In March 1982, 120,000 Iranians storm Iraqi positions near Shush, forcing a withdrawal to the pre-war border. More offensives follow, culminating in the liberation of Khorramshahr that May. Iraqi soldier Naja Aboud, trapped and wounded in a bunker, recalls, "Bombs everywhere. Fire, smoke. I thought I would die. Shrapnel tore my head. I heard weapons close. They were killing the wounded." Moments later, Iranian Basij Haftlang enters. "I was terrified. I saw an Iraqi soldier covered in blood, crying and begging. He showed me a photo of his wife and child. That picture changed my heart. I decided to save him." Aboud would remain a POW in Iran for 17 years before escaping to Canada, where he later met Haftlang again by chance, though he never found his lost wife and son. The Basij's role shocks the world when Iranian officer Hamid Zirak Bash defects. "They sent boys, 12 to 17 years old. Around 15,000 were killed, thousands more wounded or captured. By 1982, Iran has turned the tide, driving Iraq back but paying heavily in blood. Saddam offers a ceasefire in June, yet Tehran refuses, demanding the Ba'athist regime's fall, the return of exiled Iraqi Shia, and war reparations. Baghdad rejects, and the conflict enters a new phase. Iran's leaders agree Iraq must be punished but split over how. The Revolutionary Guards push to invade Iraq, expecting its Shia population to rebel. President Ali Khamenei and the army warn against it. Iraq's forces are rebuilt and still superior in firepower. The hardliners win, and in July 1982, Iranian troops cross into southern Iraq, targeting Basra, the key oil hub. But 2 weeks of fierce combat bring little progress. Lacking artillery and air cover, Iranian units are beaten back by entrenched Iraqi defenses. Saddam's army fights with determination, using heavy weapons, and now chemical agents, to hold the line. Iraqi Shia troops remain loyal, defying Iranian hopes of rebellion. Historians still debate why, perhaps Arab identity outweighed faith, or Saddam's repression eliminated Shia leadership. Iran tries again in late 1982 and through 1983, but the offensives stall. Iraq bombs Iranian oil facilities, hurting production but not morale. With Iran now dominant but unable to finish the war, Saddam shifts strategy. Accepting he cannot win outright, he entrenches his forces, turning the conflict into a grinding war of attrition. Trenches stretch for miles, artillery duels echo daily, and waves of human assaults clash with tanks and jets, blending medieval sacrifice with modern warfare in the 20th century's last great total war. Months pass without decisive action, marking the grim new normal of stalemate. For several years, the war grinds on. Iran commands greater manpower but faces crippling logistical issues, juggling old U.S. and newer Soviet-made weapons, and its officer corps suffers repeated purges by the regime. Iraq launches smaller counterattacks and enjoys air superiority, yet its army's morale falters under relentless pressure, harsh discipline, and corruption. Both nations run mass fundraising drives and flood their citizens with propaganda. Iran mixes religion and nationalism to rally resistance against the Arab invader. Even children are caught up in the message. "My childhood friends would say the war was great," recalls Nagin Shiragai. "They bragged about family at the front, how many Iraqis they killed. On TV, it was always, 'We are the best country in the world.'" In October 1984, Iran advances into the mountains east of Baghdad, scoring modest but symbolically important gains. The smaller Iraqi army strains but holds. In March 1985, Iran strikes toward Basra but is repelled. Then, in February 1986, Iranian troops seize the Fall Peninsula, threatening Iraq's access to the sea. Their biggest triumph since Khorramshahr in 1982, though later offensives bring little progress. Despite exhaustion, neither side yields. In August 1986, Ayatollah Khomeini insists, "We must not accept imposed peace or arbitration. The war must continue until victory, and it is near." After Iran's failed invasion of Iraq, the front freezes into stalemate. Trench warfare and local offensives dominate while both sides seek to break the deadlock by widening the war. Iraq, unable to match Iran's manpower and fearing attrition, retrains units and expands its elite Republican Guard for counterstrikes. In late 1983, Baghdad declares the Persian Gulf, or Arabian Gulf, a war zone, beginning the tanker war. The Gulf, vital to global oil, becomes Iraq's pressure point against Iran and the world's powers. Iraqi jets blockade Iran's Karg Island, its main export hub, and attack neutral ships carrying Iranian oil. Tehran retaliates by threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, boarding neutral tankers for arms inspections, and deploying Chinese Silkworm missiles along its coast. The U.S., Soviet Union, and European nations fear a repeat of the 1973 oil crisis. In response, NATO and Soviet warships enter the Gulf to protect shipping. Iran never closes the strait, but lays mines, fires on vessels, and harasses merchant ships, forcing Western navies to send minesweepers. In January 1987, an Iranian frigate greets the British tanker Isomeria over radio, then suddenly opens fire. As Royal Navy Captain Neil Ranking notes, "We expect the unexpected from the Iranians." Oil-rich Kuwait, alarmed by attacks, asks the U.S. to reflag its tankers for protection. Washington hesitates until Moscow offers help, then agrees. The tanker war strains U.S.-French relations as France supplies Iraq with Mirage fighters and Exocet missiles, which Baghdad uses to sink ships. On May 17, 1987, an Iraqi Mirage attacks the USS Stark, killing 37 sailors. Iraq apologizes, claiming mistaken identity. The next year, U.S. cruiser Vincennes shoots down an Iranian airliner over the Gulf, killing 290 civilians, later paying compensation. In September 1987, U.S. forces catch Iran laying mines off Qatar. When an American frigate strikes one in April 1988, the U.S. launches Operation Praying Mantis, its largest naval battle since World War II. Navy surface groups, Aircraft from the USS Enterprise and Marines attack Iranian oil platforms, doubling as military sites. Iranian ships and jets engage, but U.S. forces sink or cripple several vessels. Iran fires Silkworm missiles in reply, but they're intercepted, and both sides withdraw. By war's end, Iran and Iraq have attacked hundreds of ships. Iraq sinks 54 to Iran's 18, while many others are damaged. The tanker war heightens foreign involvement and tension, but, unlike 1973, avoids a global oil crisis. Just as the sea war stalls, Iraq also intensifies efforts to break Iran's will on land, to negotiate by striking at the home front, what comes to be known as the War of Cities. In 1984, Iraq broadens the conflict to target Iran's major urban centers. Iran lacks adequate air defenses to shield its cities from Iraqi aircraft and ballistic missiles, and Baghdad hopes that by terrifying civilians and exposing the weakness of the revolutionary regime, Tehran will be forced to end the war. Iraq fires Scud-B and Frog-7 missiles, along with air-launched munitions, at western Iranian cities like Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, and Tabriz. Iran retaliates with its smaller missile and air force, striking Baghdad, Basra, and Kirkuk. In 1987, Iraq even deploys mustard gas and other chemical weapons on the Iranian Kurdish town of Sardasht, killing more than 100 people, injuring thousands, and condemning many more to lifelong health problems. The UN and US had already verified the use of chemical weapons earlier. But a UN report fails to name Iraq, partly due to U.S. diplomatic pressure to avoid harming Baghdad's standing. A later American official admits, the use of gas on the battlefield by the Iraqis was not a matter of deep strategic concern. We were desperate to make sure that Iraq did not lose. Liu. The global community remains mostly silent about Iraq's chemical attacks. Though Iran is accused of developing and using such weapons as well, no proof emerges. Early in the War of Cities, UN Secretary-General Javier Pérez de Cuellar brokers a brief halt to the bombings, but it soon collapses. The strikes flare up repeatedly in 1984, 1985, 1987, and 1988, almost always initiated by Iraq. These recurring assaults devastate both nations' infrastructure, kill and wound tens of thousands of civilians, and crush morale, later recounted by Iranian author Marjane Satrapi in her graphic novel Persepolis. By now, the land war remains deadlocked while the conflicts in the Gulf and against civilians dominate the headlines. Yet from the beginning, other powers have been quietly drawn into the struggle. The Soviet Union, Iraq's primary arms supplier since the 1960s and an opponent of Iran's revolution, halts most deliveries in 1980 to protest Baghdad's invasion. But when Iran starts gaining ground, Moscow resumes shipments, though it plays a restrained role overall. The United States, officially neutral, opposes both Tehran's revolution and Baghdad's links to terrorism and the USSR. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger sums up America's stance. It's a pity they both can't lose. Wowrow. Still, Washington views Iraq as the lesser evil, providing financial aid, intelligence, and approving third-party arms sales, along with dual-use materials aiding Iraq's military. When it's revealed that Iraq used U.S. loans to buy weapons, the Iraq-Gate scandal erupts. Another scandal follows, the Iran-Contra affair. The U.S. secretly sells arms to Iran in hopes of pressuring Hezbollah to release Western hostages in Lebanon and to open future diplomacy with Tehran. Under Oliver North's direction, proceeds from these sales fund anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua, bypassing Congress. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan makes a humbling admission. Secretary Shultz and Secretary Weinberger both predicted that the American people would immediately assume this whole plan was an arms for hostages deal and nothing more. Unfortunately, their predictions were right. The fact of the matter is that there's nothing I can say that will make the situation right. Meanwhile, Jordan and Saudi Arabia support Iraq out of fear of Iran's revolutionary influence, while Syria and Libya back Iran to counter Saddam's ambitions. Even Israel, despite its hostility toward Tehran, secretly aids Iran, viewing it as the lesser threat and hoping both sides weaken each other. In 1981, Israeli jets destroy Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor previously damaged by Iran. Though Iran brands Israel the Little Satan, it still accepts Israeli military expertise and allows Jewish emigration. Conversely, Iran backs Hezbollah after Israel's 1982 invasion of Lebanon. Despite embargoes, the arms trade thrives. China, the U.S., the USSR, Yugoslavia, Italy, and others sell to both sides. China becomes Iran's largest supplier, followed by North Korea, Libya, and Israel. Iraq, importing triple the amount, buys mainly from the USSR, France, China, Italy, Egypt, and Brazil, and receives major financial loans from the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE. Multiple peace efforts fail. After early UN resolutions and U.S.-Soviet talks in 1985 go nowhere, the UN Security Council adopts Resolution 598 in July 1987, calling for a ceasefire, withdrawals, prisoner exchanges, and a war responsibility inquiry. Iraq agrees, but Iran insists Baghdad must first be named the aggressor. By 1987, as international tensions rise in the Gulf, the ground war intensifies once more. That year, the front remains stalemated, but both sides continue to fight desperately for victory. Iran launches several offensives, including Operation Great Harvest, one of the largest of the war. Hundreds of thousands clash around Basra, besieged for months. An Iraqi officer recalls, "They chant Allahu Akbar and keep coming, and we keep shooting, sweeping our machine guns like sickles. My men are 18, 19, just a few years older than these boys. I've seen them cry. Sometimes officers had to kick them back toward their guns. Once, a group of Iranian kids on bicycles came riding toward us, and my men laughed until those kids began throwing hand grenades, and then we stopped laughing and started shooting." Amir Karsh, 62. Outnumbered, the Iraqis throw everything into counterattacks, relying especially on superior air power, which destroys hundreds of Iranian armored vehicles. They deliberately let Iranian troops advance in certain sectors only to trap them with artillery and armor strikes, a tactic inspired by American doctrine. But Iran's improved air defenses downed dozens of Iraqi jets. Tens of thousands are killed or wounded, with losses roughly 5-1 in Iraq's favor, ending once again in stalemate. Meanwhile, Iraq continues its genocidal campaign against the Kurds and other minorities in the north. By 1988, both nations are drained. Their economies are collapsing. Iran battles 50% inflation, yet both have rebuilt their militaries. Iraq now fields 800,000 men, 3,400 tanks, 4,500 armored vehicles, 2,300 guns, 360 aircraft, and 140 attack helicopters. It's a far stronger army than in 1980, bolstered by Western equipment, better logistics, training, and a seasoned officer corps. Iran's forces include 850,000 troops, 1,100 tanks, 1,400 armored vehicles, 900 guns, 60 aircraft, and 40 helicopters, Razu 820. However, Iran suffers from high desertion rates, severe shortages of heavy weapons, and half its ground troops belong to Revolutionary Guards and Basiji volunteers. Iran reignites the War of Cities with North Korean missiles, accounting for nearly half of all urban attacks in 1988 alone. Iraq unveils the Al-Hussein missile, an extended-range Scud-B capable of hitting Tehran, prompting thousands of Iranians to flee to the countryside, fearing chemical strikes. Iran also launches an offensive in Iraqi Kurdistan, gaining ground, until on March 16, 1988, Iraq commits one of the war's worst atrocities. It attacks the Kurdish town of Halabja with sarin and other chemical agents, killing up to 5,000 civilians. Resident Kerwin remembers, "I saw people on the ground, vomiting green liquid. Some screamed with laughter before collapsing. Later I smelled apples, then blacked out. When I woke, there were bodies everywhere, birds falling from trees, animals dying, then humans. It was total annihilation." Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Halabja lay within a Kurdish independent stronghold that Saddam had crushed in the 1970s and which Iran supported during the war. Baghdad blamed Iran, though the attack was ordered by Hassan al-Majid, Chemical Ali, as part of a wider genocidal Arabization campaign. The massacre halts the Iranian offensive. It's now clear the war cannot continue. In April 1988, Iraq launches a final offensive to strengthen its position before peace talks. Its forces recapture the Faw Peninsula, inflicting heavy losses and destroying a Silkworm missile battery. The MEK, an Iranian opposition group allied with Iraq, mounts two offensives, but their brief gains at Mehran are swiftly crushed. Exhausted and short on manpower, Saddam declares the Faw victory justification for ending the war. Iran blames its defeats on the lack of heavy weapons, aircraft, and anti-air defenses, problems worsened by international isolation. Facing economic collapse, fear of chemical attacks on Tehran, and U.S. pressure in the Gulf, Tehran finally accepts the UN ceasefire terms. Ayatollah Khomeini likens this to drinking poison. On August 20th, 1988, the guns fall silent. The Iran-Iraq War, the last total war of the 20th century, is over. Conservative estimates list Iraqi losses at 180,000 dead, 520,000 wounded, and 70,000 captured. Iranian casualties far higher, 500,000 dead, 3 million wounded, and 45,000 prisoners. Some put the death toll as high as 2 million. Survivors bear deep scars like Iraqi medic Ahmed al-Mushattad. I dream about it still. I try to help someone but can't, then lose him. Sometimes I dream I'm the one killed. The smell of battle smoke never leaves me. BBC. The war costs exceed 1.1 trillion, 1988 USD, including infrastructure damage, arms spending, and lost oil revenue. Iraq alone loses $230 billion, enough to take decades to recover. Karsh 89. Even after the ceasefire, both remain militarized amid failed peace talks. Iraqi troops withdraw only in 1990. Saddam erects a victory monument in Baghdad, proclaiming his triumph would be remembered for 1,000 years. But who truly won? Iraq began the war seeking oil wealth and regional dominance, yet ended deep in debt, with no new territory, no stability, and rising domestic unrest. Still, Saddam had checked Iran's revolutionary expansion. At least temporarily, Iran, though battered, arguably emerged stronger. It preserved the Islamic Republic, consolidated the revolution, and survived against the odds. Strategically, it gained resilience. But the region remained unstable. Western navies stayed in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia rose as a rival, and Iran, feeling isolated, sought security through nuclear development and support for Shia movements in Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen. Many Iranians came to believe Iraq fought on behalf of the West and the USSR, fueling lasting distrust. Meanwhile, Saddam, weakened yet defiant, turned his army inward, unleashing another genocidal campaign on the Kurds. Still burdened by war debts and humiliation, he soon sought redemption and wealth by turning on a new target, the Emirate of Kuwait. Accusing it of slant drilling oil under Iraq's border and amid rumors of a meeting with the U.S. ambassador, Saddam prepared once again to march his forces, for the final time.